Hi, everybody. I'm Ed Costas, and I'm the director of Actors Cultural Theater. Actors Cultural Theater is a 501c3 and a not-for-profit organization dedicated to helping out actors and filmmakers better their craft. Today, we're going to be part of our ActNow program, which is a program funded in part by the Broward Cultural Division. For the ActNow program, you're welcome to call me Mr. Ed. So one of the first things I'd like to bring up is I believe anyone can act. Anyone. If you ever played a game of pretend or maybe even played with action figures or dolls, you've already done some acting. Anyone can act. Can everyone act well? Maybe not, but with a little help, they can. So when it comes to acting, one of the first things I think is great for either young actors or even senior actors is getting into improv and having a sense of play. So with improv, we play improv games that allow actors to free themselves and think on the spot and play around with characters or voices or maybe even just pretend to be an animal. And when we get into improv, what I do recommend is Viola Spolin. She is essentially the creator of theater games. So these improv games, while on the surface could seem as entertainment or as games, again, they really help the actor. And how can they help an actor? Well, a couple ways improv can help. One, if you're on a film set and you have a very open-minded director who's willing to work with you and allow you the freedom of your choices, improv can help there because a lot of great scenes in cinematic history were improvised on the spot. Another way that improv really helps is, let's say you're on stage and you're acting and either yourself or your scene partner forgets a line. Well, you want to keep the scene going, right? So while it might not be in the script, it's what we call covering. So you might cover for your other actor by repeating their lines that they were supposed to say, or just improvising a new line and keeping the scene going. And then hopefully you or your partner will get back on track, back in the scene, and continue with their acting. So voice and body exercises. The actor's body and voice are their tools. As sure as a painter may use an easel or a paintbrush and paint, the actor uses their voice and body. And perhaps one of the best teachers to look into for this sort of focus is Kristen Linklater. And she devised some great voice and body exercises. And I'll just do a couple for you right now. Simple things like maybe rotating your neck and just getting a nice stretch. Oh, I can hear my bones cracking right now. Loosening the jaw. Letting the jaw hang. And then perhaps some simple stretches from the waist down. Exhaling as you go down. Letting the body hang. And perhaps even a shakeout. Shake your limbs. Exhale. So all these little things you can get into more if you have a nice clear space on the floor. You could put down some yoga mats and really get into some stretching. Linklater, voice and body exercises. Okay, so we're going to start getting into Stanislavski. Look, if you're interested in the history of acting and how we've come to the point where we are today, where we have our Daniel Day-Lewises and our Gary Oldmans and all these great actors, we have to look back to the beginning, Konstantin Stanislavski, a Russian gentleman who he and the Moscow Art Theater came to the United States in the 1920s. And when they put on plays, there were Americans watching and were astounded by the naturalism. And that's one of the things that Stanislavski preached is naturalism on stage. None of this stage acting, if you will, with bold gestures and dramatic undertones in their voices. Stanislavski really wanted a naturalist acting technique. And the essentials of his technique is effective, emotional memory or emotional recall. So what is that? Now, admittedly, this is something that Stanislavski got a little away from, and Lee Strasberg, who came later on, adopted. And so what this is actually looking back into your own past and picking out a substitute memory for your character's memory. So a lot of times people think of this as a painful moment. You look back on a painful moment and use it for acting. It doesn't have to necessarily be painful. In fact, with a good acting class, you might start off with a more happy moment. We don't need to get into the deep stuff. So this emotional recall, emotional memory, I use it now and then, but remember, this is just one technique. So getting into Stanislavski's biggest addition to modern acting is his concept of effective emotional memory or emotional recall. And that's substituting a memory from your past for your character's memory. Now, it doesn't have to be a painful memory. In fact, in the beginning acting class, it's probably better to go back and think about some happy memories. We don't want an acting class to be a therapy session. That being said, I have used emotional memories to bring out an emotional response to some dialogue. But that's just one technique. You don't have to just focus on this technique. So someone like Stella Adler, who worked closely with Stanislavski, veered away from this emotional recall because it was too painful. It was too painful for her to dredge up memories of her family every night on stage. So she believed in something more aligned to imagination. So you imagine yourself in that situation. And again, I've used this myself. So sometimes I might use emotional recall. Other times I may imagine myself in the what Stanislavski called the what if. Now, sense memory is a little different. Sense memory is remembering that day at, let's say, at the carnival. What noises and sounds did you hear at the carnival? You heard roller coasters and rides and perhaps carnival music and the sound of games being played, children laughing. What smells were you smelling? Perhaps some caramel corn. Perhaps you had some cotton candy that day. So all of these memories, these sense memories, will help bring you back to your day at that carnival. Now, there was a bit of a division between Adler and Strasberg. So a lot of people associate Stanislavski with the method, but actually it's Stanislavski's system, and it's Strasberg who is considered the father of the method. So while Adler focused more on this sensory imagination, Strasberg was big on substitution and the sense memory. Let's talk about Sanford Meyerson. I really like Sanford Meyerson's line here. Acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And isn't that what kids do when they're playing pretend? They're living truthfully. Meyerson was another one of those acting coaches who came out of a long line of traditions since the Moscow Art Theater. The Moscow Art Theater spawned the Actors Laboratory Theater, which in turn spawned the Group Theater, which then spawned what you might know today as the Actors Studio. Instinctual responses. Now, this is a little bit more of my personal philosophy rather than actually Meisner's. And instinctual responses means living in the moment, living truthfully, but reacting to your co-star, reacting to your scene partner in a truthful, instinctual way, how you would in real life. So there is some, I don't want to say scientific technique, but there is definitely some things you can do that might not be as heady and as psychologically demanding as things as substitution, remembering negative thoughts. So there's little things you can do, what I call reformatting and scoring the script. So when I get a script, a lot of times what I do is I like to copy over all the words. And you could type it, but if you remember those old days in grade school when the teacher would make you write things 100 times, you learn that way. In fact, Anthony Hopkins reads his script 100 times. So if you're ever having trouble remembering a script, remembering the dialogue, ask yourself, did I read it 100 times? So reformatting the script, one of the things I might do is write it over, type it over, and I may take out all the sentences and separate the sentences from one another. Divide that paragraph up. So when you reformat a script, in addition to me pulling out each individual sentence, I also like to pull out the independent clause. That's the part of the sentence that cannot stand alone. Why do I do this? Because each part of the sentence and each part of the independent clause is a separate thought. So we can add a beat or an action to each one of those separate thoughts. That's part of scoring the script. That's when you go through the script and you choose a certain action verb for a word or for a line that tells you what you're doing to the other actor. You see, acting is about action. So it's not just responses, but it's what you're doing to the other actor. So what you would do is go through your script and write an action verb above each word or each sentence or each change in beat. The change in the beat is the change in the mood or change in the sentiments of the actor. Now, sticking with my concept of the reformatting, the scoring of the script, I love flashcards. I love to put my dialogue on little flashcards, and that way I can pull out important parts of the dialogue and just focus on those lines. And also, they're great to fit in your back pocket so you're not holding a big script on the set. So, learning the lines. Use those flashcards. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Use those action verbs, because while we might not remember the words, we might remember the sentiments that'll jar your memory to what the dialogue is. I also like to use little doodles. So if the line says the man was running, I might draw a little stick figure of a man running. And then when I see that stick figure, it jars my memory to know that the line was the man is running. So that's a little technique you might use. It might not be for you. Bear in mind, these are a bunch of different techniques, and that's what actors do. We build a toolbox full of different techniques that we can pick and choose what we think is necessary for that particular role or that particular scene or production. So, learning the lines. Again, repetition. Record yourself. Get yourself on audio, and then you can hear yourself. We all know a lot of words and lyrics from popular songs, probably because we heard the song over and over again. You can do the same with yourself and just record yourself. And that way, when you're in the car, you're headed to the set, you can play your own voice back to you. Character development. So now we're getting into a deeper concept of acting, a deeper philosophy, and that's character development. So who is this person you are playing? I know there's a technique where if the character you're playing is a mechanic, then maybe you put a wrench in your back pocket. Maybe there's things in your pocket that none of the other cast members can see, but you keep them in there. Maybe it's a knife. I've heard of someone keeping a knife in their pocket to remind themselves that their character is a violent individual. I also like creating character sheets. So if you've ever played a role-playing game, you may have been given a character sheet with different stats and attributes for your character. You could do the same thing. And your character sheet could say things like, what's my character's favorite color? What's my character's favorite meal? What does my character do on the weekend? What's my character's favorite song? And you start to build this real life being by making these decisions. Some actors, like Michael B. Jordan, will create an entire notebook of facts about his character, and he'll keep that notebook with him on set. And I'm pretty sure that's what he did for his Black Panther character as well. Another actor by the name of Andrew Robinson, who you might know, who played a great character named Garrick in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. His notes were so detailed on the background of his character that his notes were used to publish a book of fiction about the character. So a character notebook, a character sheet is great. Some call it an old trick of acting, but it's great for building that character and reminding yourself who you are supposed to be playing. So I have Hagen down here, as in Uta Hagen of HB Studios. Her husband was Herbert Berghoff, and he was another one of these people that came right from the actor's studio. And Hagen asks questions like, who am I? And what are the circumstances surrounding my character? What are my relationships with other characters? What do I want? What's stopping me from getting what I want? And what do I do to get what I want? These 6 questions are great for any character. And you could even use a lot of these acting tips for writing. In fact, it's recommended that directors and writers maybe should take an acting class to help them develop characters. Character and story arc. So as sure as writers maybe should take an acting class, I think actors should be well aware of writing and the character story arc. So with William Shakespeare, a character arc is broken down into 5 parts. Well, the play is broken down into 5 parts, but you'll find that the character travels through the play by first going through the introduction of the character. Then there is a rise in action, so things start happening to the character, conflicts start happening, and then we get to a climax, where at this point, the character begins to know who they are and what their objectives are. Now, after the climax, there is a fall in action, followed by the catastrophe or the end of the play and the wrap-up. There's other ways to look at this, too. You could look at Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, where it starts with the hero making a departure. The hero has to leave the normal world before any sort of story or action happens. In the middle of the hero's journey is the initiation. This is where the character begins to change, begins to realize that they are a different person now. And then the end would be the return, because in most storylines, the character returns back to the normal world. And this can happen in a sitcom too. Sitcoms are about 22 minutes long. There is an introduction at the beginning of every show, and then it leads into some sort of conflict. There is usually a climax. And then by the end of the sitcom, everything is back to normal. The obstacles are solved, the objectives are achieved, and the hero returns to the normal world. The biz, the business of acting. So if you're a new actor getting into this craft, there's a few things I recommend. One is have a resume. Just a quick and easy list of talents and achievements that you have had. It could be a school play. It could be you did a comedy on stage once. Perhaps your talent is singing. Perhaps your talent is horseback riding or fencing or martial arts. So you put all these things on a resume. That's one of the easiest things a new actor can do. The other obvious thing is to have a good headshot. Now, nowadays we have such great cameras and everybody's a photographer. So while I do recommend a professional photographer, there's no stopping you from taking your own headshot to get your foot in the door. You may want to edit it, but don't edit it too much. We don't want you showing up to an audition and you don't look like the person in the photograph. Another thing you want to start to create with the biz is your reel. So every time you do perform on stage or in a short film, try to record it and try to keep that clip. And then you can put all these clips together. Some casting agents recommend that you separate your commercial clips from your theatrical clips. Something to consider. Empathy in action. This is my own personal philosophy on acting. I suppose it relates to Stella Adler's imagination technique. And it's my belief that you gotta have empathy for your fellow man to be a good actor. So using the magic what if and imagination, I was investigating a monologue from John Bernthal's The Punisher, where he was discussing his daughter being murdered. It's a horrible story, but it's so well written that I couldn't help but imagining myself as this father who lost a daughter. So This is where substitution wouldn't work. I don't have a daughter, and certainly if I did, I would hope she was never injured in such a way. So using empathy in action, you can learn to live in the shoes of others. How do you learn empathy, though? So there's a few different ways you can learn empathy. Yes, it's something you can learn. One is simply just getting to know people. If you're out in a social situation, at a bar or an event, talk to people. Learn about them and their experiences. You never know, it might come in handy for developing a character. Other things could be simply just people watching. Go to a public place, watch people. How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they react to others? This is great for character research. Other great ways to develop empathy in an actor is, how about going out for some ethnic food, meeting some different people? Read a book. These are all great ways to improve empathy. So if you're getting into acting because you want to get rich, you want to be famous, those aren't really good motivators. Maybe for some people they are, but you have to bear in mind that acting is an art. So does the painter just paint because he's hoping to sell the painting? A lot of people paint because they love painting. So the same with acting. Act for the love of acting. Paint for the love of painting. Don't just create art with a monetary goal at the end, because your craft won't build that way. Improve your craft by constantly acting. Philip Seymour Hoffman said, if someone gives you an opportunity to act in front of them, take that opportunity. And with Actors Cultural Theater, we offer lots of opportunities for our actors. Some of it is grant funded. Some of it is just self-starting. So one of our programs is Let Your Monologue Be Your Resistance. This is a monologue showcase where we ask the actor to find a topic that they feel strongly about and perform a monologue. Why something they feel strongly about? Because then you're reaching into your own core self, and your true self can help project this speech to others. And I'd like to just say again that anyone can act. Can everyone act well? I think they can if you follow some of the steps that we discussed in this video. I'm Mr. Ed. I'm from Actors Cultural Theater. Please contact us at actbroward.org if you yourself are interested in acting, or maybe you just need an acting buddy to run lines with you. Thank you.